Welcome to the POP Cycle Pre-Conference webinar. The POP Cycle is short for Pre-Conference, Observation, and Post-Conference Cycle. What is the purpose of the POP Cycle? To build capacity in our residents to become self-reflective educators that are learner-ready. This is going to become a vital skill as you move from resident to teacher of record in any classroom. Your job encompasses moving students from point A to point B. The leadership on your campus will come in to do formal evaluations, and your curriculum supervisors and/or master teachers may do walkthroughs to give you input on your teaching capacity. The main thing we want you to do is to be able to self-reflect, either by watching your videos or by preparing, listening to feedback from your supervisors, and reflecting on things that you can do better in the future. Becoming a self-reflective educator means that you will become more effective in any classroom where you teach. What is the purpose of this webinar? We want to support teacher residents and evaluators with the implementation of the POP cycle by reviewing the alignment of the cycle requirements between the teacher resident and evaluator. This is not meant to be more work for you, but instead it is meant to guide you in a formal fashion through the POP cycle itself. We plan to give you the questions to think about when planning in order to discuss with your pre-observation information with your advisors. Also, we would like to support you in writing your lesson plan on the supervisor-approved lesson plan template. Finally, the post-reflection after you teach is one of the most vital pieces of information you will use in order to change or alter your teaching methods based on data collected from your student artifacts. Again, this cycle is not meant for you to do more, but to hone in on the thoughts that you should have as you become a self-reflective teacher. As we move through this POP cycle pre-conference materials, as well as the post-conference materials in the second POP cycle webinar, you will notice that on every slide, I have aligned what a teacher resident is supposed to do and the evaluator. An evaluator in this case can be an administrator, a mentor teacher, or the university supervisor assigned to you. In any case, everything that you do will have an alignment between the two of you. If you notice, your packets are even aligned by page number. We're going to go through each requirement of the POP cycle step by step so that you as the teacher resident will know what is expected, and you as the evaluator will also know what is expected of the teacher resident. This POP cycle is meant for our teacher residents to become self-sufficient in thinking about what they are going to do and say during a lesson, and how they are going to use student data to drive instruction moving forward. The steps in the POP cycle for the teacher resident and the evaluator are also aligned. So we have identifying dates and times, planning and preparing, the actual pre-conference, lesson delivery, for the teacher resident self-evaluation, for the evaluator scoring the observation, and then the two of you will come together for a post-conference. Let's take a look at steps 1 and 2. Steps 1 and 2 have to do with scheduling and planning and preparation. Scheduling, step 1 of the POP cycle, if you notice on the teacher resident side, says that you will have direct communication with your evaluator and mentor teacher. The mentor teacher is helped for designing what you're going to actually teach in the lesson. And if they are not the one observing the lesson, then the evaluator is important so that you can plan time for your pre-conference when you will deliver your lesson and your post-conference. For the evaluator, you'll make sure that you have communication directly with the resident and the mentor teacher. Our hope is that this information will be triangulated as we move forward with the POP cycle implementation, so that the resident, mentor teacher, and the evaluator all know the steps and action plans as you move through the Residency 1 and Residency 2 semesters. Planning and preparation is step 2. For the resident, you will meet with your mentor teacher to identify standards, outcomes, and content to be covered. And you will then backwards design your lesson plan in order to meet the needs of the students in your classroom. Evaluator for plan and preparation, step number 2, is that you are going to discuss via face-to-face or using some form of technology what the preparation of your teacher resident will be. Sometimes you can meet face-to-face for your pre-conference, and other times you can use some form of technology for recording and or communication. So part of your planning and preparation between the evaluator and the teacher resident will be to determine how you will go about conducting your pre-conference. The pre-conference has been set up using a form of a checklist. This is very important again so that there are no surprises and that you have planned accordingly. For the teacher resident, we ask that you complete the lesson plan, that you have a hard copy of the evaluation rubric, a copy of the assessment sample along with the correct answers as an exemplar, student achievement levels identified in writing from some form of summative assessment data, and you should have the ability to articulate most recent reinforcement and refinement areas. A reinforcement area is an area of strength, and a refinement area is an area of challenge. You might also consider bringing the following with you: some pre-written questions to ask your evaluator or mentor teacher during your pre-conference. Any materials, text, manipulatives being considered for use for feedback during your pre-conference, and your depth of knowledge in our Bloom's references as far as the level of rigor of work of the content you plan to present to your class. Forward thinking, you should be able to prepare all of the, you should be able to discuss all of the following related to your lesson plan: the standards, objectives, and sub-objectives, assessment, and instructional delivery, remembering that all of these parts of a lesson should have alignment in content, rigor, and learning. For the evaluator, you should be prepared to review and articulate what you have found to be the strengths and needs of the candidate while they are planning for their lesson. This should be an open conversation, answering questions, and giving feedback about what you think may go well and not well. For the standards and outcome portion, teacher residents should be ready to share the standard being utilized for the lesson. Remember, although we are evaluators for your specific content area, there are a lot of standards. So please be sure to include the standard code and the verbiage with it. You should be able to explain the standards being utilized for the lesson as the content and skills to be covered. You should be able to share outcomes being utilized for the lesson and analyze them, specifically explaining how the outcome verb and content are aligned. What are your students supposed to know, understand, or be able to do by the end of the lesson? And finally, you're going to share outcomes being utilized for the lesson, specifically identifying each of the following: connections to the student's prior learning or lessons, relevance to the student's real life and to the real world, and how this new and or reviewed content, knowledge, and skills is going to guide their learning and understanding of that grade level's standards. The next part for the teacher resident is to be able to speak to the assessment. So you're going to show an exemplary assessment. That means that you're going to show the rubric, checklist, and correct answers you are looking for. You're going to explain how the alignment of this assessment to the outcomes written for these intended lessons. And that you're going to have to explain how you will informally assess throughout the lesson. Also, how are you going to differentiate your assessments according to the learners of the content that you are teaching in this lesson? Remember, differentiation can come from differentiation in instruction or differentiation by student. These are all important things to be able to discuss so that you can plan accordingly and have positive results of learning for your lesson. The next part of your pre-conference, you'll discuss instructional delivery of the content. This is very important to show that you have aligned learning across your either lesson or unit plans to scaffold the learning for students, as well as plan for any differentiation that you may need to include. Be able to talk about how one lesson's content leads to another, scope and sequence of how the lesson instructional delivery will be given, and you may want to even rehearse any plan for areas of refinement within the lesson. So any areas that you may see as a challenge, or if you have identified your student misconceptions, that you want to double check with your evaluator that you will cover them and put them in the right direction for thinking. Next, you will complete step 4, actual lesson delivery. Your evaluator will be there to score you in the moment taking notes. They will use the identified evaluation tool. In addition to that, you will now record yourself teaching. Seeing yourself teach in the classroom helps you to do a few things. 1, to determine if you are working in the power zone, walking around the room and giving feedback for both behavior and content learning. 2, it helps you to examine actual student engagement within your lesson. 3, it allows you to use the designated evaluation tool to rate yourself using evidence from the teaching to help you better understand where you lie in the rubric descriptors and is more specific when you think about self-reflection and things that you can do differently next time you teach the lesson. After you record your lesson, be sure that you keep in mind all confidentiality requirements, restrictions, policies given by McNeese State University, the parish you are currently teaching in, and state and federal law. That is all for the first PowerPoint on pre-conferencing and the Pop Cycle webinar. If you have any questions, please be sure to contact us at McNeese State University for assistance as needed. Thank you for your time.